Good afternoon.
Myself.
We can start, can't we, because we're late. This is the Image Comics panel.
Hi. Am I introducing myself?
Why not?
Hi, my name is Matt Hawkins. I'm the president of Top Cow. I write a book called Think Tank, which you need to buy, and helped relaunch Cyberforce for Mark Silvestri. So there you go.
Round of applause, Matt.
Yay!
I'm Richard Starkings. I created and write Elephantmen from Image Comics. Hitting issue 50 this year. Wow. 6 trade paperbacks available at booth 509.
I'm Daniel Corey. I write Moriarty for Image Comics. We have 2 volumes out so far. I've got a hardcover coming out in May. And I'm an artist alley, Roby, and 2 table stout from John here.
Round of applause. Hey, did I get a round of applause?
No. Hi, I'm John Layman. I write Chew for Image, and I'm doing Detective for DC and Mars Attacks for IDW.
So who's going to start? Matt, why don't you start?
Well, actually, I'm going to let Richard start.
Are you going to me start?
Yeah.
What am I starting on? What's the subject of the panel?
This is Image Comics Presents, right?
That's right.
Am I the only one that's been with Image? You've been with Image since the beginning, right?
We started with Wildcats issue 7.
Okay.
Which goes back 20 years.
John, when did you start? You were
I was with Image when Image was Wildstorm Image before it was bought by DC Image. So
okay.
I was like 96, 97.
96 when you started?
Yeah.
Okay. I started in '93, actually. Helped launch originally Extreme, and then I moved to Image Central and worked with Richard on a book called Lady Pendragon in '98. But
you should start because your book precedes ours.
Okay.
Tell us about why you did Lady Pendragon. Anybody familiar with Lady Pendragon?
It's an old book, oldie but a goodie. Never been reprinted. Someday.
Should be collected next year. How about next year, Matt?
We were just talking about this before we came in. I don't know if any of you have ever gone back and read some of the stuff you wrote 15, 20 years ago, but when you do that, you're like, oh God, this really sucks. And so I had one of those weird moments where I went back and read it and did not like what I did, and started thinking about how I could rewrite it, and then I realized, oh, with all I'm writing right now, that's not really possible. But just in terms of, I'll talk about that, but currently what I'm doing is I'm working on a book called Think Tank. The 5th issue comes out in a couple of weeks. It's a black and white book, so I'm pretty proud of it. We started as black and white because we didn't expect it to sell, because it's about a research scientist, kind of different from what most people do. So very happy to be able to continue that. And I'm launching a book called Aphrodite 9, which you might be familiar with, the green-haired heroine from the sort of old Top Cow. That's going to be part of Free Comic Book Day. Comes out in May. The first issue is free for Free Comic Book Day, and then the second issue is actually the next month. Most of the time, Free Comic Book Days are primers or zeros or non. This is actually the first issue of the ongoing series, which has only been done once before with that astounding Wolfman book that Kirkman did. So this, you get the first one for free. If you like it, you can buy the second one. So, but I think, are we taking? Is this more of a general Q&A, or are we just all blabbing for 10 minutes each?
Well, I think I want to get you back to the original question. Why did you do Lady Pendragon? What was your intent behind that?
Well, as you know, Awesome Comics folded, and I was unemployed.
Anybody remember Awesome Comics?
Okay.
Nobody remembers Awesome Comics?
That's where Jeff Loeb was involved. Yeah, Jeff Loeb.
Coven.
Who?
Coven. Coven. Remember
Coven, the Coven, Ian Churchill. It's good stuff.
I guess because a lot of that stuff's not reprinted.
Yeah, it's actually not in print. It's not on digital either. But no, I was unemployed. I'm sure you've all been there at one point in your life, and like, what the hell am I going to do with my life now? I was about to get married and wanted to do something, so I decided to launch my own book and sort of put something together and decided to do something different. I always had a passion for Arthurian mythology and had an interesting twist on it. So did a lot of research, spent some time over in England for fun, and came up with a concept and tried to do something different. I think, one thing in Image I like about Image is the diversity of it. I mean, if you look at the 4 different books that we're probably the most known for now, they couldn't be more different. And none of them are, for the most part, spandex-clad DC or Marvel books. And in my career, I've never really wanted to do those characters because they've always been done. And since I have an MS in physics and I've got a background, I went to Caltech, I've got a unique perspective on life and the world, and I can offer something different. So, but that's just me. Now it's Richard's turn.
Well, you know what? I wanted to tell that story because Matt did a previews ad, which was 12 issues in 12 months. What a concept from Image Comics, because Image at that time was well known for being late. And you know, Matt used to come into the Comicon studio quite a lot at that time, and we lettered the Lady Pendragon issues for him. And this was right before I started self-publishing Hip Flask. But you know, Matt was sort of starting from nothing. And it really inspired me, because he said he was going to do 12 issues a month. The artist was John Layman?
John Stinsman.
John Stinsman. And sure enough, he did 12 issues in 12 months. Did you ever use that beautiful Drew Struzan cover?
I did.
Who knows Drew Struzan?
Guy did the Star Wars painted covers?
Star Wars. Yeah, the Star Wars posters.
And you know why? He did that cover for me for free because he liked the book.
Yeah.
Studios pay $100,000 to get his artwork on their books, on their movies, and so this is a world famous painter who I knew from a friend of a friend who I hung out with, and he's like, I really like your book, it's cool, I'm going to do a piece for you, and I'm like, okay.
But you know, it's a great example of, you know, once you start doing something, you attract support, you attract other artists' interest, and I had that same experience with Hip Flask, because once the artist Ladrone, who'd been working on Cable for Marvel, did some painted work on a Thor story. Once he started working with me, other artists who loved science fiction comics wanted to work with me. And you know, finally when I did my Image book, I actually did get 12 issues out in 12 months, because he'd done it. You know, and I thought to myself, well, if Matt can do 12 issues in 12 months, maybe I can do that. And I didn't think I had more than 12 issues in me, but you know, we're coming up to issue, I've done more than 50 issues already. And you know, Image is a great place where the door is wide open, you know, and if you have an idea, you know, a lot of people come to these panels, probably there's a couple of you out there, because you want to do your own book. You want to write your own book, you want to draw your own book, you want to own what you've created, and the door really is wide open to Image if you submit ideas and if you attract the attention of Eric Stevenson, the publisher. And my experience was slightly different, because I already had published, self-published 2 issues of Hip Flask, and both Eric Stevenson, the current publisher, and Eric Larson, the previous publisher, said to me, why don't you bring that to Image? So what really sort of I didn't expect was how, you know, I knew that you would be left alone at Image. I didn't know you would really, really be left alone. You are really left alone. There's no prodding. Sometimes it's like, aren't you soliciting an issue this month? That's about as far as the interference goes. So, you know, it really is, you are left to your own devices. If your book builds an audience, you know, you can reach that audience. So, you know, I encourage anybody that wants to try it to try it, because once you've got that taste of freedom, creative freedom, it's hard to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And John, your ass was kicked by Robert Kirkman, right?
In what way?
Didn't the video that he put out 2-3 years ago inspire you?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I was going to do that anyways. You know, I was leaning towards, you know, I'd had this dumb Cannibal Flu book in my head for a long time, and my Marvel and DC aspirations weren't really happening. And Kirkman did this manifesto where he talked about ownership, and he was right. So I just said, you know, I'm going to finally do what it takes to, you know, put this book out. And I didn't expect it to do well. I thought I would do 5 issues, eventually make my money back, hire another artist, do 5 more issues, and in the course of my life, maybe I'd get 25 issues to tell the tale. But it you know, blew up.
And what issue on there?
32.
Round of applause.
I say, just from, because I'm a bit of a statistician, I mean, John's book outsells a lot of mainstream Marvel and DC books on a monthly basis, and especially the trades. I mean, his trade sales are crazy. Very envious, by the way. But
yeah, it's nuts, and I don't understand it. I mean, my artist Rob thinks, well, if you put out a good product, you know, you're going to get the sales, and that's not true.
It's
there
not true.
are tons of good books that don't find the attention. I got very lucky with timing, with artists, with you know, it's just a perfect storm of events, and my story is not the average comic book story.
But I think that's a cautionary tale in a positive way, because it's something I always say: if you're not playing the game, you can't get lucky. You know, different things. I mean, Kirkman did how many books that no one ever heard of? Battle Pope and all these crazy books. I've been reading them. I'm like, what is this stuff? And then Walking Dead comes out. I'm reading this and I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. I wonder if this will go anywhere. And, you know, you talk to all these guys that got these long-running, successful creator-owned series. Every one of them generally says, yeah, I was hoping I could get to 4 or 5 issues. When I did Think Tank, it was originally intended as a 4-issue black and white miniseries. I did it in black and white because I didn't think it would sell. That's really the reason. I mean, people are like, oh, it looks cool in black and white. Was that a creative decision? I said, no, I didn't want to pay a colorist. You know, and you know, so it was a financial decision. And now I think it looks cool that way. So plus it's still cheaper to make. You know, you got to try. You know, and I think that's the great thing about Image is you own all of it. Like I own Think Tank. These guys, we all own our own properties. You know, and you build on different properties over time. And like now with Think Tank, I'm doing through at least 12. You know, and hopefully more, because I think as you start writing these things, you have initial ideas, and when you write them, you get a lot more ideas. And that's way. How many of you guys have your own projects eventually you'd like to do? Curious. A lot of you? Okay, that kind of figures. ImageComics.com, and some of you may have been to the panel earlier where I talked about some of this, but it has a submission policy, and it's very interesting. One thing I will suggest to you is less is more. If you don't have a full book that's done that you can submit as an actual book that someone can read, keep your proposals very succinct, because when you're burning through a lot of proposals, like I read 800 of these written submissions for the Top Cow Talent Hunt in the last month alone, when you're reading that many things, you're looking for a reason to say no. Okay? And if you write me a 1,000-page treatise of all your crazy world building, I could find something in there for me to say no to. But if you write a 3-page treatment that sort of catches my attention, you have some cool art. The other thing I always say, the best use of any marketing money is to find an artist that actually matters and get them to do a cover or a single marketing piece that you can use, because you can pimp it out forever. And you see that sometimes where you have a really good piece. And a lot of these guys you can meet at cons and they're accessible. You know, you meet them over time. And you know, I think having a good marketing image is a good idea.
Daniel, what's your story?
Well, it's funny, I was just talking about the submission process for Image through the website, because, well, I was working on Moriarty. I had spent a couple of years actually just writing the first story arc. It just took a long time to figure out how I wanted to do things, and then I spent a couple of years going to different cons and shopping it around and trying to find a publisher. We actually printed about first 8 pages we had drawn, and we printed that up and bound it to a comic book at our local printer, and we're just giving them out to people. Finally, kind of near the end, I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and send this to Image. You know, they're probably not even going to see it, but after I mailed it, I think it was 3 weeks later, I got an email. So
from who?
It was from Eric.
That's amazing.
So
it takes me 3 weeks to get an email from Wednesdays.
Yeah.
That's fast.
So it was, yeah, from Eric Stevenson, who's the current publisher, and it almost felt like a fluke. Kind of how I ended up on this panel today. It felt like a fluke. I don't know with these guys on the panel, but things seem working out that way, I guess. But anyways, that was back in like 2010, and then there was about a year of, you know, make tweaks, do this, do that. You know, there was like a lot of things we had to do to kind of get the book up to speed and get our first couple issues done. As soon as we had our first couple issues on the FTP, we went ahead and finalized everything, and then our first issue came out in May of 2011. So, you know, compared to these guys, I'm very, very new. You know, this is my first book with, you know, a major company. So we were able to get a couple of volumes out, and yeah.
And how did you find your artist?
Anthony Diachidua is my artist, and that's another thing that just kind of came together. I asked my neighbor who's an artist. He's like, I don't do comics, but I have a friend who does. And it really kind of, and Anthony ended up being just like the perfect guy at the perfect time, kind of coming up. He had the skills needed to really get a good comic out. So things came together. You know, like the way I tell it, it feels like sudden and crazy, but it was several years of hard work, just like anything these guys had to go through. Several years of hard work in the beginning.
John, how did you find Robin?
Chew had sort of been in development for a very long time, and I had done a graphic novel that I wasn't proud of because I didn't like the artist. I didn't pay him. He did 5 great sample pages, and then he quit his job, took out a mortgage, and just did something I hated. But he had done all this stuff, and I couldn't really say, wow, your work sucks. But I learned from that, you sort of get what you pay for. and I didn't pay for anything at that point. So I had been transitioning into video games. I wrote a video game, got a check, and took a chunk of it to fund, you know, a budget to get a real artist. And I took my time, was, you know, sniffing around, you know, and Brandon Jerwa, who writes G.I. Joe and Dynamite stuff, said, I've got this guy, you know, check him out. We're doing a Tokyo Pop book that just got canceled. And I knew I didn't want a manga artist. I'm like, I don't think so. And he said, look at his website, it's very diverse. So it was like, okay, we talked, and he was going to do 5 sample pages, which I would pay him for. And I had told him that I had been pitching it to Vertigo. And so he drew the first page in this very kind of scratchy, kind of Guy Davis-y style, which is not to say that Guy Davis isn't great, but I didn't want him on Chew, you know, and I had told him it was a Vertigo book. I had been pitching it, and so he drew it like a Vertigo book. And I knew I wanted this book to be funny, because it was gross subject matter. I wanted to appeal to people, and like, after my bad experience, what I learned is fire the artist. If you're not getting it, you know, cut the cord so you don't get in too deep with this person. So I was ready to fire him. I'm like, I don't know why you drew like this, because your stuff on your website looks like this. And he said, well, that's my style, this cartoony stuff. You said Vertigo, so I was drawing in the way I thought you wanted me to draw. And I said, let's try it again. Draw it he'd been told again and again by editors, draw like this artist, draw like that artist. And so he didn't have the confidence to draw like himself. And I said, draw like yourself, which is the best thing you could tell an artist.
I actually had the same experience with Ladrone, because Jose Ladrone was working at Marvel on Cable, and he could do Jack Kirby or he could do Mobius, and they kept saying, oh, well, draw like Jack Kirby. So he drew like Jack Kirby. Then they saw, Mark Powers, the editor, saw some Mobius type work that Ladrone had done, and he said, you can draw like Mobius? Draw like Mobius. And when I started working with him, I said, Jose, how do you want to work? And he said, I want to paint. And, you know, he won an Eisner on the 3rd issue of Hit Flash because he's a painter. You know, once you give somebody the opportunity to draw the way they want to draw, you never know what you're going to get. You know, I didn't know I'd have to wait so long for Jose to draw the issues, but, you know, what I have is such high quality work. What I wanted to ask you though, John, was, is it true that Vertigo rejected Chew because of Rob?
No, Rob was never attached at that point.
He wasn't?
And yeah, no, that was just the concept.
Did they ever accept the proposal?
No.
No.
But, and when I say Vertigo rejected me multiple times, they rejected me a couple times and then ignored me a half dozen more times. So it's not like they actually rejected me 8 times. They rejected me twice, and then 6 other editors just blew me off.
And, you know, one thing I think is
Which is a great story.
You know, one of the reasons I think Chew has, you know, found its niche is because, you know, the Vertigo audience is not a brand specific audience. They're a good series specific audience. So I think you've sort of filled that niche that Vertigo doesn't really even.
I think you could say that about Image as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, Vertigo is going through hard times, and Image is surging.
Yeah.
And I think Vertigo got a little too narrow.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
For a while, and Image, you can find anything you want in Image.
And I think, you know, creators like Brian K. Vaughan on Saga, you know, he brought Saga to Image because he was frustrated with some of the restraints at Vertigo. And I think that, you know, Rob's attitude that you have to draw a certain way, Vertigo, that's the fault of Vertigo rather than the fault of the creators.
Yeah, because honestly, had they accepted it, they would have put a Vertigo type artist on. They never would have accepted Rob, and it would have been dead as a gross, ugly book, you know, where a guy's eating people's guts. Where instead, I've got, you know, this funny book that, you know, that's very accessible, which you wouldn't think given the subject matter.
One thing that Richard was saying that I think is interesting, and John was echoing, is getting an artist to draw the way they want to draw. I actually think that's an interesting corollary to writers, because having read 800, like I said, just recently I've gone through reading 800 separate proposals from writers, and that's a monumental task in 30 days, let me tell you, it's spinning my head. But I can't tell you how many of them I read. This guy's trying to do Grant Morrison. Okay, this guy's trying to do this. It's very obvious to me who's trying to do what, and you're always going to be a second rate of that. And the cliche is always write what you know, and I always try to flip that around as write what you know about, but actually write what you would rather learn about. Because when you go to school, you learn stuff and just force down your throat. But if you want to learn about race car driving, you want to learn about genetics or DNA research or chromosomal detachment or something like that, go write a story about that and do the research, because then it's fun for you. You know, you're learning something, you're excited about it, and you can make it compelling and interesting. And then the other thought I had is one interesting thing I've noticed, because I've been at Image for, this is going to be 20 years in April that I've been working with Image in different companies. And I've looked at companies.
And I like different companies.
And the one thing I have noticed, and the reason why, part of the reason, it's not the only reason, Walking Dead, Shoe, Manhattan Projects, Saga, you look at a lot of these various issues that are successful Image series, and there's a couple things that you always note about the ones that are successful. One is they're all character driven. There's huge world building things, but there's all specific character stories that are told within that. And I can't tell you how many times I see world building done in a way that the person's so obsessed with the world that they're telling about the world and not about the character. And I always use the example, if you're telling an alien invasion story, tell a story about one guy in that midst of that. Okay, that's the more compelling, interesting version of that.
Just like War of the Worlds, which is the first alien invasion story.
There you go.
But
all about Richard Burns attacks.
And the other thing which I think John is really good at, and Kirkman, I think these guys are really good at, Kirkman too, are really good at cliffhanger endings. You know, because the one thing you got to look at is I can't tell you how many times you read a sequelized comic where people just write it as a graphic novel. I think that's just a huge mistake, because then you read it as a graphic novel. You get to the end of issue 1, issue 2, and you got to realize that each one of these books is a story in and of itself. It needs to have some sort of reason. You want to get to that last page and say, holy shit.
Well, I think the other thing that you have to think about is you want, I mean, you're grateful for any reader, but you want the monthly readers. Because they pay, my trade readers give me a nice big check twice a year. But my monthly readers give me a check once a month to, pay the phone bill and the, cat food and all that. And you want to do things to keep people buying it. So I make every issue sort of its own self-contained thing, so you get a bang for your buck. I try to add things like letters pages that the corporate companies don't do, and I want to make it so you don't want to wait every 6 or 8 months. You want to get it every month and a half.
I think that's really important. And
I'm sorry, I think he's absolutely right, and I do the same thing in the back of Think Tank, where you do these added value, I call it added value, or bonus content, or back matter. You can use any one of those words, where it's additional material explaining, and if you pick something that's got an interesting twist, you can write about, like in Think Tank, I use a lot of real science, and so I inject a lot of the real science and I explain it in the back. People read it and they think it's sci-fi, but I'm like, no, this is sci-real. You can go do all this stuff that's going on in this book, and here's the links that prove it's real.
See, I do the lazy man approach. I say, send me a picture of your cat reading a book. It takes me no work at all. And I don't even have to do anything on the letters page. I just slap page. And they're so happy. People are like, oh, you took a picture of Fluffy in issue 17.
I've got a question for the audience, actually. Raise your hands if you still read monthly paper comics.
yeah, it takes most.
Okay, and now, monthly digital comics. Still, it's on the up. And now, only trade paperbacks. Wow, so it's still predominantly monthlies.
Did you have a question?
She did, didn't she?
I had a random question just because how many pictures of cats have you received?
Well, I don't count them all, but every time an issue comes out, I get flooded by I'll get like a dozen within the first week, and then they'll kind of trickle in.
The answer is not enough. Send your cat photo to John.
Well, we got enough that we have to put a rule, because it was just send me your cute cat pictures, and now we get so many that your cat has to be with an issue at you, because I had more than I could run, which is a nice problem.
Does anyone send you Lego?
Yeah, I got a dude who made me Tony Chu and Savoy custom Legos. Yeah.
So, any more? Should we take questions from the audience? Anybody got a question they're dying to ask?
Yeah.
I just had a question about the rumors about the Chew television show.
That's not a question, it's a statement.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Yeah.
It's in development, and it's been in development, and there will be news one way or the other. But it's been so slow that I no longer hold my breath, which I'm told is the healthy way to do it. So if it happens, it happens.
More questions?
Sean? Will we ever see Elephantmen in the movie?
I hope so. And in fact, you know, we met with a major, I'd say he's a major star, who not only wants to do the motion capture but direct it as well. That's all I can tell you. And also we've got an art director attached that's worked on multi-million-dollar movies. So the way Janet Zucker, who's the producer on the project, is working it, and the way that most production companies work it, is they put together the package for the studios first. So until a studio says we want to make that film, it's hopeful. But before that, you have to sort of put together the right people so that you get the right interpretation of the book, and you know, the producer can select the team. So that's what she's doing.
How much input will you have on that?
I've had a lot of input, but that doesn't mean my input will necessarily make it past the treatment that it was in my contract to write a treatment. So I've been very fortunate because Janet has kept me involved and informed all the time. A lot of people sell their option and they never hear from the producer again. Sometimes their movies get made without the creator really knowing that they were filming it, you know. So I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a very good experience. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Will we ever see a think tank movie or show? Or?
I've sold the option. I mean, we used to announce option sales all the time, but then it got to the point where people were like, "You've announced this Darkness movie 40 times," and it's like what John was saying. I mean, we sold The Darkness to Sony in 1996. We sold it to Dimension in 2001. We sold it. It's been sold multiple times. We've been paid millions of dollars for a movie that's never been made. And that's what happens. It is in active development now. The Darkness Think Tank is, we sold it to Mark Gordon's production company, and that's sort of a development deal, which is absolutely meaningless. It means maybe. We don't have a writer. I mean, here's where when you start seeing casting and people like, oh, they've attached X person to this project, then it's real. Otherwise, it's all just bullshit. So, I mean, I would like to. I think it's a world that hasn't been well mined. Part of the reason I did it is because I think there's been a void of John Crichton-esque kind of material since he passed away. And, you know, there's not... Michael. Who's the other guy? Michael Crichton is what I meant. Yeah, I'm sorry. And Andromeda Strain is one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time. You know, I think that is it's unparalleled. That stuff is far scarier to me than Alien.
No, it's not.
Other questions? Yeah.
John, you mentioned you did some video game work. Did anything make anything notable that we'd know?
I've done a Metroid game. I've done. I wrote Champions Online, which was originally the Marvel MMO, and I moved and took a staff job. Well, what happened was I moved and took a staff job, like a 9-to-5 job, and then I got a video game check while I was drawing a salary. So I thought, oh, I got money to play with. I'm going to fund this stupid cannibal cockroach that no one else wants. And I'm just going to make it happen to get it out of my system. And it was really a matter of me telling my wife, I'm going to spend this tremendous amount, and then I'll either have something to show editors and get more work, or I'll kind of be done with comics. So Chew was sort of my last, you know, role at the craft table. But I did, I've done a lot of weird games for like Xbox. I did like Soldier of Fortune 3, Cabela's Dangerous Hunt 2007, World Series of Poker. Like
there's a lot of writing.
Talking dialogue.
There's a lot of writing. What kind of writing is in a Cabela's game?
Ooh, a lion, shoot it. but it was weird because I struggled in comics for a very long time, making very little money. And then video game people found out I wrote comics, and they handed me money and jobs by the bucketful. And so it looked like I was going to transition that route. I mean, the work wasn't any harder for a lot more money, and they thought comics was cool, where in comics everyone sort of has a inferiority complex, and they want the janitor on The Big Bang Theory. And I don't mean someone who plays a janitor. I mean they want anyone connected with TV rather than someone who's been struggling in comics for 15 years. Whereas you go to video games, "Oh, wow, you write comics? That's awesome. We'll hire you."
Did you start out as a letterer? initially?
No. I learned to letter as an editor because I knew freehand and Illustrator because I worked at a newspaper before I was an editor. And I had a couple letterers. This was back in the days of film, because we're all old. And you had to get film out, and you had to drive it to the FedEx office by 6 if you wanted your comic book out. And so Friday, it would be noon. I had corrections, and I had letterers that were, partying all night, MIA. It's like, well, shoot, I know the program. I can do this myself.
Wildstorm letterers.
Yes, yeah, it wasn't
not comic graph letterers.
So it was easier for me to make my own corrections than it was to find certain letterers. And then when it came time to do my own book, I thought, well, shoot, no one's going to put more love and care into my own book.
Right.
And where do you buy your lettering fonts now?
Comicraft, and I recommend it to everybody.
We use your fonts too.
And the thing is, he did video games to make money to make his own comic book. I sell comic book fonts to make money to make my own comic book. So I always recommend people get another source of income.
Yeah, don't think you're going to make money. Go into comics because you love it, not because you think you're going to make money.
I had transcripts of writing broadcast news.
And we're all writers who've had to seek out artists, and artists like to get paid. Writers can work faster. So having income that you can spend on an artist past issue 1, it's not enough to have enough money to make issue 1 of a 5-part series. Or I've spoken to creators, writers who've got like 100-issue series in their heads, and I always say, start small. 1 issue with a beginning, middle, and end, or a 4-issue series with a beginning, middle, and end. Because you will run out of money fast, especially if you're self-publishing. But even if you're publishing through Image, if you don't get the numbers, if you don't get the money coming in, you'll be dead in the water. There's a lot of Image books that never got completed. Gutsville is one that comes off the top of my head. That was like 4 years ago now that Fraser Irving and Cy Spurrier did a book, and they didn't realize they wouldn't have money to complete it. So even the professionals who've been around and have other ways of making income don't necessarily have the follow-through.
And you've got to realize, if you've got a great artist who's willing to work for free, eventually he's going to get poached by someone who is willing to pay him. And reality is, you got to pay the rent, and that person will, desert you as soon as, So I make sure that Rob is fed and fat and happy. Not that he's fat, but he could be. And that keeps him diligently working on Chew.
I think now in this market there's an interesting, like we did that Cyberforce Kickstarter, we raised a lot of money. And there's Kickstarter, there's Indiegogo, there's various crowdfunding source things you can do to raise money to cover art costs and things like that. And I see a lot of guys doing it that are coming from nowhere. I mean, it's not like it's only established people you see doing it. So, you get guys that are raising $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And I think a lot of that is, this is the importance, I think, of social media. Twitter, Facebook, all those various things. And I think that's where that crowdsourcing, crowdfunding is a very positive thing.
It's also very easy to get your stuff out there with the web. Like, you can do a web comic and build your audience for free, and then, once they're kind of hooked, then you...
Does anyone read Dr. McNinja? On the web or in paper form? Because it exists, now there's 2 trades out, and that's a book that wouldn't have existed if you hadn't self-published it on the web, and now Dark Horse are publishing the trade. So there are lots of books out there that didn't exist without that writer-artist or a team putting stuff up on the internet and following through. And it doesn't matter how long you took to do it. If you put it on the web and then somebody wants to collect it, that's a great way of getting a foot in the door too. So, any other questions?
Yeah.
Do any of you buy any of the original art from your artists?
As much as I can. Yes.
I don't, but they give it to me. So I have all the first issue covers for everything I've ever done. So I don't know, but I've never paid for any of it.
I buy artwork off Boo Cook, who's my cover artist, because he sells it too cheap. And I buy it because if you're selling it for that price, I'm going to buy it and keep it, and then I'll split how much I sell it for you in 10 years.
I get a page out of every arc of Chew, and I ask for every bed page. And it's even in the script. If you read Chew, there's pages where characters end up in bed and they're full-page splashes. And I've gotten every bed page. And I even write in the script, this is my page, Rob.
Have you got any covers?
Yeah, he gave me the cover to 5. And you know, I could get more, but I don't want to cut into, you know, his income's significant.
Right, yeah.
He would cut me a deal and then he'd lose money. And honestly, I kind of got my original Art Jones out of my system as an editor, because when you're an editor, you get, you know, oh, Frank Wiley, John Cassidy, you know, hey, you know, Planetary was fun, here's a page. Holy cow. But, you know, afterwards, you only have so much wall space, and you realize, I got all this great stuff sitting in my closet, and that's a shame, and you're taking money out of these guys' pockets, so.
They gave it to me, I didn't ask for it, by the way, when I said I just want to clarify.
J. Scott Campbell gave me this wraparound cover. But he and I do a lot of work for him, and he does covers for me in return. So, you know, no cash changes hands, and it's a great way of working in the industry is to trade favors. If you've got a skill, to trade it for somebody who's got their skill, because you know, it's you're not getting something for nothing.
Friendship and networking is huge in comics. You know, knowing people. My first book, Puffed, I got a Frank Whiteley cover, a John Cassidy, and a Sam Keith. And I wasn't in any position to pay these guys what they deserve. And John Cassidy, I just bought him drinks one night at San Diego Con. Frank Whiteley can't get Twinkies in Scotland. So I sent him like a case or two of Twinkies for his kids. So I got a Frank Whiteley cover for Twinkies.
And Frank Wiley did the issue 50 cover of Elephantmen, one of the covers on Elephantmen 50, which is also available as a t-shirt at booth 509. Any more questions?
I was just going to interject. We got Mike Bosberg to do a flashback scene in issue 7. Mike is known for drawing all the posters for Tales from the Crypt, and did a lot of comics. And that was because he was a friend of a friend. He was a friend of Anthony's, my artist, and he did it for my meager rate that I was able to pay, because he loves detective stuff, and he and I like a lot of the old same movies. We both like Raymond Chandler and stuff like that. So yeah, same kind of thing.
You know, Chew got published after all my trying to pitch it to various publishers. I never pitched it to Image because I was afraid of being rejected. And I had known Eric Stevenson, because you know people when you've been in the business. You just know them from going to cons. So I called up Eric Stevenson, said, I have a budget. You know, I have this weird cannibal crime book that I'm doing. I'm looking for an artist. Can you point anybody my direction? And he said, no, but find an artist that that doesn't suck, that I like, and we will publish the book. And so I got it approved without even trying to approve, after trying for so hard. And it was all because I knew the dude and could just, call him up.
And I think once you've been in, working in the industry a while, it's partly, the project that you're pitching, but partly your reliability. They know that you'll turn it in. John had editorial experience, I had editorial experience, Matt's had editorial experience, and editors know about deadlines. Do you have editorial experience?
No.
Did you hit all your deadlines?
I hit all my deadlines. Yes.
I used to.
So, and that's another key is, get the work in on time.
I edit the news.
Libby.
Speaking of editorial experience, any tips on grabbing that IDW job that just opened up?
Apply for it.
Thanks, Richard.
John, you want to probably work for IDW?
What do you look for? You don't necessarily look for comic book experience. It's organizational. It's being able to write and proofread.
Yeah, I've had 6 editors-in-chief that have worked under me at Top Cow, and we've probably had 20 editors in the last 14, 15 years. And I think a lot of them, it's interesting, most of them come in as assistant editor. They start as interns, and then they become an assistant editor, and then the job opens up and they're the editor. That's honestly how it's happened over the last 15 years, at least at Top Cow. And so I think that's where, unless you're well networked already and know the people, I think that might be difficult. I don't know. I don't know how Ted does it. I don't know if he's the one that's doing the hiring. But yeah, it never hurts. If you don't try, you never find out. Like I said earlier, you can't win if you don't play.
But it's a lot of money I mean, it's a lot of work and not a lot of money, and you have to really love comics. I got hired, I worked at a newspaper as sort of like a Jimmy Olsen, and I got hired, Wildstorm, I got to know Wildstorm because I would cover the San Diego Comicon every year, and they hired me as an assistant editor, and I took a cut in pay, but it was comics, you know, so of course I jumped at it, and it was horrible. It was absolutely miserable. John Nee was my boss, you know, and he's basically Kevin Spacey in Swimming with Sharks, throwing out staplers and all that. So after 3 months of realizing how much better I had it at the newspaper, how much more I got paid and treated better, I quit. And the newspaper hired me back and gave me a comic book column, which I wrote for the book section for a year. And then Wildstorm came back to me, and they're like, hey, you know, you weren't so bad. We'll make you an editor this time. And, you know, it was more money than an assistant editor. And even after I had worked there and it had been miserable and broke, it was comics. So, of course, I went back. And this time it worked out. But, you know, don't expect a lot of glamour or a lot of money, and expect a lot of hours. And when you're an editor, you are working. All artists are crazy, and they will call you Sunday morning, Friday night, you know, they'll call you at 3 a.m. I mean, you are always working, and you are always glad handling these basket cases. Is that
Yeah, I have, I'm not going to mention any names, but I've gotten multiple artists out of jail. I have, over many years, I drove to Las Vegas and picked someone up, and I never really got the real reason why.
If they're not liars, they're delusional, and they believe what they're saying.
Yeah. Because Rob's not here.
But we love them.
Yes.
I used to, back when pages were FedEx before the digital file transfer stuff, we used to always get artists that would give us fake FedEx numbers. Here's the tracking number for the package, and then I'd go. I finally got wise to that, where I'd have the little GoFedEx.com thing up, and I would plug it in by the time they were saying, I said, that's not a real FedEx number. But,
now it's, you know, my scanner's broken.
Or I emailed it, what's wrong with your email?
Yeah.
You know. Any last minute questions? We're getting the eye from the back that we're over time. I know Jim went half an hour over. Anybody else? Yeah?
Hey, John, can you pronounce Tony Chu's ability?
I say it different every time just to screw with people. So whatever you say is the right one.
Is that a real thing?
No.
Okay. I always keep needing to look it up.
I was really into root words. I mean, everyone asks if I do research, and I don't, but I always go into like Greek and, you know, for everyone's weird powers, and it's, you know, this Greek word mixed with this, you know, Latin word. And that's all the research I do.
Very cool. Makes it easier.
Big round of applause for John Layman.
Are you promoting anything at the show? Are you signing today?
Yeah,
or?
just Chew. I'm over in some booth somewhere.
Daniel?
Hi. Yeah, I'm on Artist Alley B21. You're like,
oh yeah,
like,
I'm in B something.
What's this little statue you have here?
Oh yeah, we're getting toys coming.
Oh yes. This is something I'm very proud of. It's a prototype of our upcoming collectible figure. I just got out of the box Friday morning, so these will be available soon. It's nylon print. We gotta paint them and stuff, but hopefully at WonderCon we'll have some available. So be on the lookout.
Cool.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for Daniel. Everybody knows what you're promoting.
No, we'll do you first. Go ahead.
Elephantmen. Actually, these are free issues. Come up after the panel, and you can grab a free issue. Hip Flask, Ouroboros, and the Elephantmen issue. And all the trades are available at my booth. And big round of applause for me.
Shamelessly here promoting my Think Tank book at the Top Cow book. We have the trade, and of course, because I'm that vain, I did a photo cover of myself for this beautiful girl. And you can buy that at the Top Cow booth. Thank you.
Anybody want free issues?